Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge. Secretary, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I want to get into your work leading HUD, but I first want you to take a trip down memory lane for us. You were the mayor of Warrensville Heights, Ohio, and a member of Congress for over a decade. How did those experiences prepare you for leading HUD?
I believe that every experience you have prepares you for the next one. So when you are in a position where you either lead other people or whether you make decisions for other people, I think that you grow from those experiences, every single one. And so the more you take on, the better you become at what you end up doing. So by having been a mayor, of course, you deal with constituents on a regular basis, as did I in Congress as well. But as well, you understand how to run organizations and how to make sure that the right people are at the table, that the right people are focused on doing a job for the people we serve. And that is what I've always considered myself to be, as a public servant. So I just get better, at least I believe that I do, and I hope that I do, with every experience that I have.
You mentioned the phrase right people at the table, and I want to talk about those people at the table right now. This is the first time that the Housing and Urban Development Secretary, the Director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the President of Ginnie Mae, and the Federal Housing Administration Commissioner are all women. What do you think is the significance of this?
I think it can't be understated. When you think about the fact that we control trillions of dollars, that we are probably one of the most important groups of people in housing today, it cannot be understated that this kind of a power, and that's what it really is, and this kind of authority has been given to four women who I believe are very competent and capable of making sure that we can move the markets forward, that we can protect the public trust, and we can do the job that takes care of people that we all know as a part of our mission.
Commissioner Gordon, I was speaking to her earlier, and she said that at the start of her career, she would go into a room and she would be the only woman in there. I'm sure you probably had a similar experience in your life. What is it like now going into the room and seeing other women that you just described as capable moving the markets forward?
It's interesting because I really don't think about it at all anymore. Yes, I was one of those people early in my career that would walk into a room and I would be the only woman there, but I don't even think about it because I'm so accustomed to not only working with powerful women, but standing on the shoulders of so many women who went before me, who paved the path for me, who made a way. And so I'm just following the path of those that went before me. And I feel very, very comfortable and sure-footed because they made the path so much easier for me.
Who is one of those women?
One of those women, obviously, is Patricia Roberts Harris, who was the first Black woman to lead HUD some more than 40 years ago, but someone who did such tremendous work of being an ambassador, also being the secretary of another agency. So I think that it's important that we look at the roles that women have played and do play, and we try to feed into those things so that we can continue to prepare the next generation, just like a Pat Harris prepared me. I want to prepare the next generation as well.
Now let's talk about present day. The HUD website describes the role of secretary as a, quote, major responsibility, and says many of the duties and requirements that the secretary must fulfill are dictated by laws. In the past 2 years, knowing that those are the guidelines, how have you been able to make this role your own?
I think that you still have to figure out how to do a couple of things. One is you have to fulfill your mission, and that is to make sure that we provide housing for all of America, but particularly for those in most need. So you have to make sure that you know what your mission is, which is to help provide affordable housing for people who need, whether it be rental housing or home ownership. So we have worked to make sure we make home ownership more accessible and to make it more affordable. We've done the same thing in the rental market. So that's the first part of it. But the second part of it is to make people understand that they have a HUD secretary, a HUD agency, and an administration that cares enough about what we do to try to impact their lives, to let them know that government can work and it can make a difference in their lives. That is what is important to me. And I think that you put your own stamp on it, your own personality on it. And I think that I'm hopeful that I've done it.
Let's talk about your priorities. You've said a few times now in our conversation, you want to make home ownership more accessible. Seems like that should be a right. It seems easy enough. How have you been able to do that so far?
Well, there are a number of issues that we faced when we came. Of course, most young people would say to me, I have a lot of student debt. Can I still buy a house? And one of the things we have done is we have recalculated how we address student debt so that more borrowers become creditworthy. We are working with down payment assistance. We know most people can afford a mortgage if they can pay their rent. But what their real impediment is down payment. So we found ways to help them with down payment. We as well know that a lot of people come to us and present themselves with no credit. People that just work hard every day, that don't have a lot of bills, they have no credit. So what we have now said is that we will consider you creditworthy if you pay your rent on time every month. So we are making it easier for people to get into the process. And we are putting millions of dollars into housing counseling to tell people how to prepare, to be ready. So those are the things we're doing on that end. But then on the other end, with our rental assistance, we have helped hundreds of thousands of people stay in their apartments. And during the pandemic, we helped not only people stay in their apartments, but we helped people keep their homes by refinancing their mortgages. So we're really in it, really, really deeply, to figure out how we can make life better for all of the people that we represent. And that is millions of people.
What was it like leading HUD in the thick of the pandemic? Because I know the top issue on everyone's mind, aside from, hey, I don't want to catch COVID, is how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my mortgage?
Well, we saved about 2 million homes during the pandemic because we had put in place programs that would allow them to either modify or refi their current mortgages. We've done a lot of work that I think has been a model for what should happen in future pandemics if we have it, because we're going to have. So we were able to save about 2 million homes just by allowing them to find a product that we have that fits for them. That's the first thing. Rental assistance was another thing. We also had a moratorium on foreclosures. We had a moratorium on evictions. So through that 2-year period, we put in place the tools we know that we could put in place, and those that the Congress and the president allowed us to do. And it just happened to have worked very well.
I do now want to pivot to some challenges housing faces in this country. And now I'm going to quote from the Treasury Department. The benefits from home ownership have not been shared equally. In the second quarter of 2022, the home ownership rate for white households was 75%, compared to 45% for black households, 48% for Hispanic households, and 57% for non-Hispanic households of any other race. This month, HUD celebrates the 55th anniversary of the signing of the Fair Housing Act. While commemorating the legislation, you said this: "We are still working tirelessly to fight housing discrimination." How specifically is HUD doing that?
A number of ways. One, we have just promulgated a rule to talk about how we address segregation and discrimination in our communities. It is a rule that is in the field today. It's AFFH, which most people do know it's affirmatively furthering fair housing. And we're in a comment period, so I can't go into a lot of detail about it, but we are asking people to help us address some of the situations and to ensure that communities that receive our resources are following the law. Secondly, I would say that in my many years of practicing law, fair housing is the law of the land, and it is something that I intend to enforce. So we are doing more by way of doing investigations and listening to people who believe that they have been aggrieved by the process. We have put in place what we call a property evaluation system, we call it PAVE, that values properties fairly. We know that communities of people of color and our poorer communities tend to find that their homes are undervalued significantly compared to white homes. And then lastly, we are looking at how we make more people creditworthy. I talked about that a bit earlier, so that we don't have the huge gap between loans that we give to non-people of color and loans we give to people of color. Because more times than not, people of color are denied loans because we say they're not creditworthy. That's why we've addressed some of these issues on the front end, so we can make it easier for them to purchase a home.
Do you think HUD, under your leadership, will be able to close this racial gap?
Well, we're closing it little by little. I don't know that we will close it all, but certainly we will make a dent in it. There's no question about that.
I do want to discuss the issue of homelessness also in this country. According to HUD's 2022 annual homeless assessment, there was a 0.3% increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness from 2020 to 2022, and homelessness, quote, rose significantly for individuals, people with disabilities who experience long-term homelessness, and people in unsheltered settings. What is being done to help those groups?
The Congress and the president started addressing homelessness in our COVID package, in our CARES package. There are some almost 500,000 people who sleep on our streets every night. It is, in my opinion, one of the worst things that we can say that is happening in this country today. But what we're doing is we're housing people. We are finding resources to assist communities in finding ways to house people. We are looking at how we can make low-income housing and shelters and non-sheltered care available to communities in need. We are putting resources. We've already put just $10 billion that came out of the COVID package just to address homelessness. We have given just recently in the last month or so to address unsheltered housing and rural homelessness. So we are working at the problem. We are doing technical assistance. We are doing everything we know how to do, but we are putting a lot of effort and a lot of resources toward it, and I think we're being successful.
You said that this could be one of the worst things in our country today. Do you think homelessness in the United States is at a crisis level right now?
There's no question about it. I mean, you know, the greatest nation in the world should not have people sleeping on the street, should not have people sleeping on the park benches. It should not have veterans who have served this country sleeping on the streets. It is a crisis, but as is housing a crisis in this country. When you think about the fact that housing is more expensive today than it has been in recent history, there's not enough housing to house all the people who need to be housed. And people can't afford the houses even when they're available. So it is a crisis, whether it is housing or lack thereof, and in addition to homelessness. Yes, it in fact is a crisis.
When you're looking at the geographic spread of homelessness in this country, 30% of the people experiencing homelessness are in California, and Phoenix has seen its homeless population more than triple since 2016. Does HUD target these areas specifically when it comes to combating this homeless crisis?
Absolutely. Just in the last couple of months, we have given to the city of Los Angeles that has a major problem 2 different large grants to assist their people on the ground who are working on this problem, get people housed. We've done the same thing in communities. We look at the communities of need, and we make sure the resources go to the communities that need the money the most. I mean, we don't just put it out there and say, okay, everybody, you know, you get somebody, you get something, you get something. We make sure that it goes to the communities who need it most. So yes, absolutely, we are putting our resources and people in California, in Phoenix, in Oregon, and all of the other places that we know are critical right now.
Secretary, looking forward into the second half of President Biden's term, what is at the top of your agenda for the next year and a half?
It's to provide more housing. We have to build more housing to take the stress off the market. If we don't build more housing, then the supply will always lag and demand, and so the prices will stay high. So in order to take stress off the market, we have to build more housing, units of housing, and put it on the market. And the way you do that is work with communities to be sure that they allow us to build housing in places where maybe in the past they haven't allowed new housing to be built. So we have to work with our communities on zoning and planning. We have to work with home builders on how we can make housing affordable. We also have to work within our own structure, things like making sure that we have low-income housing tax credits through Treasury that make it easier for builders to build. We are having resources that are available through our state housing finance agencies to loan money to developers at less than market rate. We are looking at putting more money and flexible resources into our community development block grant program, our home program. Everything we know how to do, we are doing to make sure that every single opportunity has some kind of heft behind it, because we can make it happen. So we're doing our part. We just need everybody else to do theirs too.
How far along are you on this process? I mean, personal anecdote, my mom just sold her childhood house. So I was able, or our childhood house. So I was able to see this firsthand. How far are you along on building new houses, on working with home builders, things like that?
Well, when you say how far, I mean, we are having conversations and we are working through how we can do it reasonably. The reason there are not a whole lot of new single family homes that are moderate or affordable is because builders generally can't make money. So we're trying to find ways to make sure that we can close the gap first. But secondly, we can work with communities to keep the cost down. So if you have what we call exclusionary zoning, it can add as much as 40% to the cost of a house. So if we can talk to them about how we can change things and make it more inclusionary, we believe we can bring down the cost. The other thing is we are working together with cities, with home builders, with others to talk about how we pull together resources to make it more affordable for people to build. So everybody's got a role in this. And I think everybody right now is coming to the table. So we're further along, I think, than people might believe we are. The housing starts are not where we'd like to see them, but they are getting better. And I think that over time, I think in the next few years, we're going to put a really significant dent in this problem.
You're saying your team's at the table. Who's missing from the table that needs to pull up a chair and get there?
Well, it's people that get resources like CDBG. You have some cities that are entitlement communities, is what we call them. They get their own specific allocations. But cities that are under 50,000, which is the majority of cities within this country, they either have to go through their states or through their county governments. So we need to have governors. We need to have county commissioners. We're doing really, really well with cities, larger cities, because the problem obviously is much bigger in the cities. And we're doing well now with governors. We are pulling people in saying, these are the things we need to be talking about, and this is what you can do to help, and this is what we can do to help you.
Secretary Marcia Fudge, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.